Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all here this evening to the 12th Annual Outstanding Citizens Dinner. I would like at this time, while they're going ahead and they're going to start serving right away, but I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our head table this evening. On my left and on your right, the President of the Winchester Chamber of Commerce, Alan Iden. And on Alan's right, the daughter of our guest of honor this evening, Lee Griffin. And on her right, Arthur's lovely wife, Polly. And last but not least, in the subdued tuxedo, our guest of honor, our good friend Arthur. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to keep the evening moving, we're going to have a few speakers speak during the dinner period, and I hope that you have an opportunity to hear some interesting anecdotes about Arthur and his history not only here in Winchester but throughout the world. The first speaker is a gentleman who has been hired, I understand, to be Arthur's biographer. And that gentleman, I've met with him this evening, and we've talked about the time that he is going to speak, and I'm assured that we won't get past chapter 3. But he's a fine gentleman and one who's a very good friend of Arthur and very knowledgeable of Arthur. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Mr. Herb Kenny. Mr. Kenny. Pardon? Right. Mr. Kenny.
Thank you, John. It's a great pleasure. Is this working? Does it come through? It's a great pleasure to be up here and pay a tribute to Arthur Griffin and to Polly, without whom this would not have happened, and to Lee, who also has made considerable contribution. And you're going to hear a lot of anecdotes tonight about Arthur Griffin. And by the time they're through, you will all understand that it takes on something like one of those roasts that you see on TV. So I want to be very serious and warn you about what this august occasion really is. What you are dealing with here is a historic figure. You see Arthur Griffin wandering around in some of his absurd costumes. And you see him shopping. You look at his pictures you see here and there, and you see his books, you buy his books, you read his books. And you think, well, he's very nice, he's a fellow townie, we'll love him in Winchester. But you don't realize that in the history of photography, Arthur Griffin is a historic and significant figure. Photography has only been with us about 160 years. Now in 1839, Daguerre in France invented what became the daguerreotype, which was the beginning of photography. Color photography has been with us only half that time. And in the history of color photography, Arthur is a pioneer. There are any number of photographers going strong in the year that Arthur was born in 1903, Stiegler. There were others after him, Ansel Adams and those. You can go on naming them. They were all dealing in black and white. They were all hesitant about dealing in color. It was Arthur who saw the value of color to the extent that the Kodak company hired him to go around the world taking pictures, which he did. And he came back, however, to New England, his first love. And he is probably the first man in New England. He's certainly the first man in New England and one of the first men in the country, and indeed the first man in the world, to make color photography into art. And that is why he is significant. No one else had done it in his day, and indeed, most photographers today are afraid to take a color picture of New England because everybody will look at it and say, that's Arthur Griffin. But he's irreplaceable, he's unique, and he is a historic figure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is the chairman of the Winchester Board of Selectmen, Mr. William O'Leary. Mr. O'Leary.
Thank you, John. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the town of Winchester and its Board of Selectmen, several thank yous are in order. First of all, I would like to thank the Griffin family and the people that have backed them to donate to the town of Winchester its first true art museum. Thank you to the Griffins very, very much. I noticed Arthur at Mass at St. Mary's. He had Father Cohen here first tonight to give the benediction and the prayer, and he sits near me at Mass, and he's been praying very, very hard that he could get through the Winchester permitting process. And I'm proud to report tonight that it appears that all of the appropriate permits are in order or will be in order shortly, and the Arthur Griffin Museum, which he and his foundation has donated to the town of Winchester, will get off the drawing board and on the map this year. Arthur's learned a lot about law and about conservation commissions and planning boards and zoning boards of appeals and beautification design review committees and things he thought he'd never have to learn about. But the team he assembled and the cooperation and working together of all the town boards has brought this plan forward finally, and we're very happy that he's getting some fun recognition tonight, because as a selectman, it's nice to have something fun to work on. We deal with a lot of problems from the small to the large, but to have somebody walk into the board and say, I'd like to give you an art museum, would you like one of those, was a lot of fun to work on. And my thanks on behalf of our board, Steve Powers and Peter Van Aken and Tom Schmidt and Bob Deering, on behalf of the whole town. I can't say it enough. To work on a fun project instead of a problem has been very refreshing for all of us, and we appreciate the cooperation of all of the town employees and town boards and the Griffin legal and engineering team that we've worked with. We wish them the best of luck, and we have a little token of our appreciation which we'd like to present to Arthur now. On behalf of the entire membership, we extend our very best wishes and expresses hope for the future and fortune and continued success in all your endeavors. Be it hereby known to all that the Board of Selectmen of the town of Winchester hereby offers its sincerest congratulations to Arthur L. Griffin in recognition of his 1991 Outstanding Citizen Award, the 22nd day of May, 1991. Thank you very much, Arthur, and your entire family.
Thank you very much, Bill. Arthur, I noted that Bill said that you must have learned a lot about permitting in the last few months, and I would suggest to you that maybe Bill O'Leary has learned an awful lot about politics in the last few months. Did you notice what he said to you with respect to the permits? He said, it appears that the permits will be in place, and I would suggest to you that the operative word there is appears. And while we're speaking of politics, let me introduce the next speaker, Representative Paul Casey. Paul Casey, our representative to the Great and General Court. Paul is going to present to a presentation to Arthur, and after he finishes that, he's going to tell us how he would have voted if they had a roll call vote instead of a voice vote last night. Paul. Zach?
I hope that satisfies you. I just want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me here once again this evening. I always get such a thrill in presenting the the citation from the state, and I just look back at poor my predecessor who's sitting over there, and I know that he's very relieved that I'm here. I didn't think you would be. And everybody else, as it's taken, I can't tell you how appreciative I am because of the fact that my predecessor was here and was honored also at former date Whip Saltmarsh. And so it's always nice to see him in the audience. It's always nice to see my colleague, my good friend Charles Shannon, sitting down there. And I'm glad that he took care of the raffle tickets that were coming by. Kathy Jackson said, oh, they just called him. So I said, oh, thanks. She will get me. It's an honor to be here, and only the fact that we're still voting right now at the House, the state's problems and woes seem to take a priority at this moment, so I will be brief, and I know you find that hard to believe, but I'd like to, thank you, but I'd like to hereby have it known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Arthur Griffin in recognition of your esteemed award as Citizen of the Year. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all endeavors. And that's signed by myself and also House Speaker Charles Flaherty. And I have to say from the bottom of my heart that Arthur, we're appreciative of all you've done for Winchester, and keep on going. Take care.
And to wrap out the legislative body, ladies and gentlemen, the senator from our district, Charles Shannon. Senator Shannon.
Seeing that Paul Casey used up my 12 seconds, I'll do it in 2. It won't be too repetitive, and John will say thank you very much. This is signed by Billy Bulger from the Mass Senate, and it hereby extends congratulations to Arthur Griffin for receiving the Outstanding Citizens Award from the Winchester Chamber of Commerce for 1991. And be it further known that Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success and a great opening when you finally get your museum, Arthur. You know? John, thank you.
They just gave one citation, we probably wouldn't have this big overrun. Ladies and gentlemen, there are some people that are going to be circulating around the crowd that are going to be taking raffle chances on this beautiful photograph of Winchester Center here, and I don't know if everybody can see it, but it's looking at the town hall across the duck pond, one of his more famous ones, and that's going to be raffled off this evening. The next speaker is a very good friend of Arthur's and a gentleman who has the distinction of being, in addition to a good friend, one of Arthur's neighbors. And I'd like to introduce at this time Mr. Bill Dingwell. Bill?
I have a few slides. My mother and father built a house in 1938 on Hillcrest Parkway, and it was a normal house. It had a lawn, had wallpaper, had furniture from a store, and we noticed, as I moved into the neighborhood, Georgie Barbaro and I noticed a house next door. That's not the house next door. That's not the house next door. Oh, good. That's his focus slide. The house next door was Arthur's house, which he had built a couple of years before. This is about 1936. And we inspected this house, and we found out that it had no front lawn. It had no wallpaper. It had no furniture that had ever seen the inside of a store. But it did have a badminton court and a black toilet. So I went in to see Mrs. Griffin, and I said, you know, Georgie and I would like to use the badminton court. And she said, come back at supper time. Mr. Griffin will be here. I went back at supper, and he wasn't there, and he said it was okay for you to use badminton court, but he wants to take your picture. I said, well, okay. When? He said, 8 o'clock Saturday morning over by the Wyman School. And I said, all right. But I don't know what he looks like. Do you have a picture of him? She said, yeah, there's one hanging around here. We have a slide. I think I was 8 years old, and I had never seen one of those before. She said, are you interested in other pictures of Arthur? I have a wedding picture. Would you like to see that? I said, sure. Arthur's the one on the right. So I showed up at the Wyman School, and I posed for 3 hours. And we made the globe. My friends in the 3rd grade didn't speak to me for a month. And we moved into the fall, and the leaves started to get on the badminton court, so we lost interest in that. And so Arthur said, would you like to pose again? I said, sure, but, you know, I got to get paid for this. And he said, how about an ice cream? The next one is of me and Lee is my favorite. Gets them all, doesn't it? Well, Georgie and I went up Christmas time to try to get some work shoveling, and Mrs. Griffin asked us in, and I asked Arthur for an early Christmas tree picture. He didn't have one. He has this one, which is basically a normal looking tree. This is only half a tree. He couldn't afford the other half. But I was fascinated because all the ornaments in the early tree were big on the bottom and small at the top. And I asked Mrs. Griffin, you know, why do you do this to yourself? And she said, he likes it that way. So the next winter, I went up to, you know, I never got the shoveling job, but anyway, I went up anyway. And she said, come on in and see the tree. You'll like it this year. The big balls are at the top. Can I have the slide? Yeah. Needless to say, this made an impression on my young. So I think the next picture was taken during the war, and evidently there was a shortage of trees. Can I have the picture? And he had made a tree out of copper tubing. And I said to him, but Mr. Griffin, it's a war on, you know. This stuff is tough to find. He said, I'm going to build a bathroom. And I needed some copper tube. And I said, I don't believe it. Can I have the next slide? He said, yeah? And he had taken this picture of how he laid it out on the floor and attached a line to the center of it and lifted it to the ceiling. Wonderful. The next year, well, I don't know what it is on the left, but on the right is a picture, is a Christmas card, and the tree fell. And he had left it up all summer. You know, my mother showed me this Christmas card, and I said, you know, I don't believe it. How could he come up with this? And one of the neighbors was visiting, and she said, have you seen this year's? It's so cute. And I said, my mother said, yeah, I've seen it. It's awful. And the neighbor said, well, it's a beautiful picture of Lee. Do you want to see what my mother got? That water was hot, too. one day I came home from school, and he was painting the driveway yellow. And I went home and I told my mother, he's painting the driveway yellow, Mom. And she knew it wasn't my father I was talking about. And she said, I got to see this one. So she went up and the driveway wasn't yellow. The ceiling in the new bathroom was yellow. It was made out of egg crates, which he had spray painted yellow in the driveway. And the last slide is a picture of this wonderful bathroom. And my mother's remark was, well, he's finally got wallpaper and a white toilet.
Very, very good, Bill. Our final speaker before dinner this evening is both a friend and a professional colleague of Arthur's, Mr. Courtney Crandall. Mr. Crandall.
Seems there's an impression created by the Chamber that the folks they named Citizen of the Year are some sort of super beings that can walk on the water. So it seems to me it's my obligation in talking about Arthur to bring us all back down to earth a bit, at Arthur's expense, of course. I first met Arthur before I went into business in 1947. I was getting engaged. My future in-laws decided to throw a huge party to have me meet all their friends. And no need to hire a photographer for the event. Our good friend, the famous photographer Arthur Griffin, is coming and bringing his camera. Well, the champagne flowed, and it flowed, and it flowed, and Arthur snapped, and things flowed and snapped and so forth. And to paraphrase a wonderful line from Carousel, it was a real wet clam bake, and Arthur had a wonderful time. Count them, 3 pictures came out. In one, my sainted mother-in-law had her mouth wide open. Another one, my father's eyes are closed. I have kept the third one just to prove to people that at one time in life I did have a head of wavy hair. Then there was a time my direct mail agency landed the Plymouth Cordage account, which was a big name in the rope industry in those days. And the first assignment was to publish a booklet showing the public all the wonderful creative ways you could use rope. Not just for tying boats, but for decorating cocktail trays and making lamps and all this kind of stuff. And my creative director called Arthur, telling him to send in any and everything he had in the way of pictures of people using rope. Arthur dug through his files, he gathered what he had, and then being the eternal jokester that he is, he decided there was another use for rope, to hang oneself. And that he would rig a shot of himself hung in midair and slip this shot in among the others in the pile that he was sending in. Hell of a gag. So in his beamed living room, he rigged up a rope and a noose and so on. He ran a second hidden rope down and tied it around himself so he didn't actually hang himself. And he tossed the line over the beam, and he set the timer on his camera to take the shot. And he stepped off a crate he had there and started swinging in the air. And just as he got swinging nicely, his wife and daughter walked in the door. One day, handling telephone company advertising, I called Arthur and told him I was tired of the standard, smiling, well-dressed, terribly correct models the telephone company used in their advertising, and I wanted real people. Well, I got them. One shot showed a guy reaching down off a horse to answer a phone in a phone booth. Unshaven people in their underwear were running everywhere to answer phones in a lot of the shots. And one was a rather ugly lady in her bathrobe, hair curlers, cold cream all over her face and all over the telephone, which was a no-no in those days. And I called Arthur and I said, I'll probably get shot by either the client or by women's liver, somebody for running that shot. But he said to me, hey, you wanted real people, you got them. We ran the shot, and I got a host of letters from women saying, thank you for showing us the way we are, real people, rather than props on a pedestal. In 1963, I married a wonderful girl, and I brought her from Esperance, New York, population 200 and slipping, to beautiful Winchester. She didn't know Arthur, so she didn't know that Arthur sometimes stutters. Arthur telephoned to congratulate me. I wasn't home. Marion answered. She heard nothing but heavy breathing. She decided this was one of those big city mashers she'd heard about. And she hung up. The phone rang again. She answered, heard nothing but the heavy breathing, and she hung up. It rang again. She picked it up, and just as she was about to give this breather a piece of her mind, a voice said, for Christ's sake, don't hang up. Is Courtney there? As many of you know, Arthur's Scenic have graced the covers of some 75 New England telephone directories company. The pictures were selected by a committee at the Yellow Pages, and one year this committee picked a nice sunset shot of Horn Pond for the North Suburban directory cover. After it was printed and in distribution, somebody, somewhere, turned the book sideways, of course, and saw what they thought was a lewd outline of a naked lady created by a dead branch lying in the edge of the water in this particular shot. Well, let me tell you, all hell broke loose. An awful babble arose with priests and parsons and shocked mothers demanding that we recall some 250,000 telephone books. I heard about it from the committee, and I asked Arthur if he had seen this image of the nude lady before he sold the shot to the telephone company. Hell no, he said. But if it gets so everybody sees a nude woman in that picture, we will have to change the name of the lake. Horn Pond, he announced, would become Horny Pond. Then one day I called Arthur and I told him I had a dream assignment for him. I was considering introducing a new beer for Carling, one we could launch right here in New England. And the twist would be that it would be brewed with wonderful underground spring water that was out near Natick out here, where the glacier had covered over an old ancient valley full of crystal water. Hidden Valley beer would be introduced with beautiful shots of the forest out there, sun on the snow-filled pines, on the beautiful trees growing on the Lost Valley and all that kind of a shtick. And Arthur said, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I'm not going to take any more commercial assignments. If I do one for you, I'll have to do one for everybody. Well, I put down the phone. I was quite hurt. I could see where he would like to take time to catalog all these thousands and thousands of chromes he had and not do work for others, but I wasn't just a client. I was his friend. He could make an exception for me. After all, he screwed up my engagement pictures 30 years ago. But it finally dawned on me that, sure, I was his friend, but so was everybody else. Everyone he knew, everyone he met became his friend all over the world. Well, I promised you I'd prove that Arthur doesn't walk on the water, but in one way he almost does. He hasn't an enemy in the world. I don't know anyone else who can say that everyone I've met is my pal. And I am honored, Arthur, to be just one of them.
Thank you, Courtney. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your meal.
Okay, what's the ideal peak to valley on a 32 amp cascade? 4.2 decibels. Yes!
At Continental Cablevision, we send our people to school every year to make sure you get the best service possible.
Yes! What's the average level behind a customer's TV set? 0 dBmV. Beautiful. Last question. What is the most important component of the entire system? The customer. Ready, let's go to school.
Continental Cablevision. We're number one because we make you number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, for those more affluent members of the audience who paid for a ticket, we have in this box the tickets, and we will draw one. The winner is my mother. What's the number, Mom? The number is 133749. You're out of here. I got a whole political. Oh! We'd like to check the ticket. 133749. Here's what you win. Let me just show this to everybody. This is the picture for those that may not have seen it. Now, if you like this and decide to keep it, you can send us a check for $100. No.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you.
You want to leave? Yeah. I mean, it's up to you.
That's fine. I trust you.
And the winner is, what is your name?
Cheryl O'Leary.
Cheryl, I didn't recognize you. It's my wife. No. I apologize. Cheryl O'Leary. I have a couple of great lines, but I get in big trouble. Yeah, my apologies. My apologies. Where is Bill? Oh. Steve. Well, for a little change of pace, maybe for a more serious note, let me introduce our next speaker, Mr. Clarence Beauregard. No. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, this is big money. Take it easy. Oh.
Thank you, John. Down a little. Is that about the right setting? Can you hear me? Now it starts this way. When Arthur was a college kid, perhaps the smartest thing he did was skip the law and the CPA and try to find some other way to make a living. As a boy, he got a camera as a toy. It was a fascinating thing. Diaphragm, the lens, the spring, the shutter, and the way the light engraved an image out of sight. It got so bad he even kept the camera with him when he slept. But when his college days were done, he knew his time for having fun was over if he could not find a substitute for daily grind. So with the strap around his neck, he traveled north to old Quebec. He shot the Hotel Frontenac and pretty girls from front to back. From there he traveled wide and far, by foot, by mule, by motor car, and camels too, across the sand to where the great pyramids stand. Poetic license.
I'll keep you covered.
I'll keep you covered. Now Arthur is an honest guy. He would not think to tell a lie. But let him see a covered bridge and have at home an empty fridge, and he'll pretend the fish he bought at Purity was one he caught when he had set the timer stop and scrambled down to be a prop. And when he shows our own town hall, that cherry tree with blossoms tall wasn't really there at all. He tied those branches to a stake. That pretty picture was a fake. It really was a double take. So when you see his glossy book of pictures he pretends he took, you can't be sure that what you see is false or is reality. Now, Arthur likes a jaunty hat and bolo ties and things like that. He drives a big Mercedes-Benz to snub his many jealous friends. But when he gets his center built on Aberjona River silt, he'll have a parking space for free, however big his car may be, because he'll be the maitre d'. No. So after he had courted fame and had at last become a name, a call from Eastern Kodak came that they would pay him heavy dough to be a traveling picture show. So off he went across the sea to England, France, and Italy, Iran, and old Afghanistan, and where the sacred Ganges ran. When war broke out, he was in Thai, the country of the River Kwai. But he got on a leaving plane and never did go there again. Now let's partake of food and drink and roast old Arthur to the brink. Because when it's all been said and done, it really all was said in fun. Tonight at last, he's number one. He's home at last, no more to roam, and Polly vows to keep him home. But if he's in a fighting mood, let it be clearly understood that he will put you in your place and call you to your to your foolish face. Tonight we have him here with us, a charming but contrary cuss. So let us pause before we utter prayers of grace for bread and butter, because the rhythm of the shudder might cause his aging heart to flutter and might induce his voice to become a little difficult to understand. Have a good day, Arthur, and what's left of it, and welcome aboard this growing society of distinguished citizens of the year. I warn you, however, it is a good ego trip. It makes you feel important for a day or two, but in the long run, you get nothing permanent out of it. In this respect, I think it would be nice and very appropriate if the town would vote to reward these distinguished recipients of this great honor by giving them a modest honorarium of some sort. Say a lifetime waiver of all taxes of any kind. Retroactive, of course, to include all the previous recipients from the time of their initiation. Now we have a number of so-called big shots of the town here tonight, and I take this opportunity to put the question squarely before them. Why is it that nothing is ever done in this town to reward its distinguished citizens for their outstanding contribution, each in his or her own way, to the welfare of the human race? Is there a law in Massachusetts against it, I under?
What was the last word?
That's it, I guess.
You want a copy? Thank you.
Let me just.
No, I'm all right. I'm all right.
Hey, Bill. If you're looking for a definition of one of the 1,000 points of light, I think that's him.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is a scratch golfer and a good friend of Arthur's, a gentleman who has also a little video program for him, Whitney Gay.
Actually, it pleases me no end to take this mic away from John right off the stage. You'll never see it again tonight. You can thank me later for that one.
Hope the slides are better than the humor.
Oh, you taped it down, I've got 6 of John's baby pictures. Wait till he sees those.
Remember, I get the mic back.
Here, stick that as a tail there. There you go. All right, thanks. This is Arthur, obviously. This was taken in Provincetown in 1941. Notice the dark hair. Here's Arthur. If you haven't signed this, please do. Arthur never misses an opportunity to challenge his own wit. This was done in France in 1932. It's called Something Up His Sleeve, and that really is Arthur's philosophy, something up his sleeve. Here's Arthur. This is one of Arthur's early pictures of his wife, Claire and Lee. Arthur always loved to use red in his pictures, as you've all noticed. This is a picture of Polly and Lee. This is called a self-portrait by the Custom House Tower. Here's Arthur judging his first beauty contest. I'm not the politician to tell you how the awards went. Arthur took some sports photos. Some of you may not recognize this fellow. His name is Jack Bremick, obviously the goalie for the Bruins. Does anyone recognize Gene Tunney? He took this fish out in the 5th round. Notice the bloody mouth. Arthur had many firsts in his life. This first he wasn't prepared for. Arthur went on a fishing trip, and the fellow who was standing beside one of the poles asked Arthur to hold his pole while he went to the bathroom to grab a beer. And oh my God, the only fish of the day bit Arthur's pole, and it was a record-setting fish. It took him a great while to pull it in, and he needed all the coaching that he could get. But he pulled it in, and he set a record that day. Does anyone recognize Joe Louis in his first Boston appearance? The splendid splinter in his rookie year in Boston, Ted Williams. This was the first color photograph in the Globe, and it was in the sports section. It was a quarterback called Charlie O'Rourke from Boston College. This is a very special picture, and I'll tell you about it in a second. Okay, I'm back. This is the gold medalist, Andrea Mead, the only gold medalist downhill skier for the United States. This was a quintuple exposure. It was taken at night after she'd raced all day. It was below zero, and she had to go up the mountain 5 times and come down. and it's a quintuple exposure, all in one large 4x5 plate. It was the first of its kind. It's a great shot. This was the first trip of the across the transatlantic trip to Boston of the dirigible. It was shot from the roof of the old Globe building. Now I'll need a little help with this one. Thanks for your patience. This was Dr. Sergei Kasavinsky. It was one of the first of a kind. It was a montage of him at work, obviously. This is Sir Winston Churchill. He's in Boston for the 100th year ceremony for MIT. This is Arthur with Mayor Curley. He just grabbed his arm after he'd come out of the courthouse on a long day. He wanted to tell him that this was his last chance to have his picture taken. No less for a political shot for the Globe. And here he is, and what he's saying is, I can't believe you photographers, you're always wasting our time. But he certainly made himself available for the picture, didn't he? This is Cardinal Spellman. As you notice, the colors are very muted. This was shot with 12 ASA film. That should mean something to a lot of you. It's very difficult to shoot in low light with high-speed film. Does anyone recognize Cardinal Cushing? Does anyone recognize Cardinal Griffin? Actually, Arthur is garbed to take the funeral pictures for Father O'Connell's funeral. That was the first of its time for the Catholic Church. As you notice, Arthur has a small camera instead of his large 4x5 plate camera. We recognize Teddy Kennedy. Here's the Capitol building in Boston being painted black during the war. And here is the Victory Garden going underground during World War II. If you notice in the background, the dome is painted black. This is from the garden. How many of you young women recognize old Mr. Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra? This gentleman is one of the very few surviving Civil War veterans in the center of this collage. And what would it be without Norman Rockwell? And there's FDR. And this is Charles Boyer. Some of you may recognize him. Arthur, in a shy way, told Charles Boyer that his wife was a great fan of his, and would he please go to the phone and call him up? And Charles did call him up, and he said, "Hello, Claire, this is Charles Boyer. It's very nice to meet you. It's very nice to talk to you." And Claire responded, she thought it was one of Arthur's pranks. He called her twice more and twice more. This was a recruiting picture that Arthur did locally, but it was so popular in Washington it was splashed all over the national papers and used during the course of the war. And this is another. Thanks for your patience. This is the pianist Paderewski. Arthur was given a box to take this picture, and again, it's a very difficult picture to take because of the speed of the film being so fast in a poorly lit room. Arthur had 72 chances to try and capture the shot. Fortunately, 2 out of the 72 came out, and we're looking at one of those. The essence of what he was trying to do was to capture him every time he slid into the design that you can see above his head. And as long as he wasn't moving while he was in that design, he would try and take the picture. This is Mayor Tobin after he was no longer mayor, and he was with the Board of Labor, having dinner down at, I believe it's Hugo's Lighthouse, and it was one of the last pictures professionally taken of him because he had passed away 2 weeks after. This was taken at the Stoneham Zoo. This is Chappaquiddick. As you can see, Arthur's been splashed on many covers over the years. And for those of you who can't see in the back of the room, it's the Farm Magazine, Holiday, Collier's, Life, and many others. Here's the infamous image of the suburban paper. This was the first of 75 images that Arthur did for the New England Telephone Company. It was a very popular series. For those of you who can't read, this is the Quincy Quarry, August 8, 1938. This was a paste-up. The original picture was taken up in Marblehead in the town hall, I believe, or the library. And Arthur marched himself out to Devon's, and these 3 soldiers posed for him, and this was the result. This is Boston's famous T Wharf. There's one story, as there are many of Arthur for firsts. Arthur was skiing on the top of Mount Washington. He never skied for 3 days. Actually, he never left the building he was in. It was during the infamous time when the highest recorded wind speed were taken at the top of Mount Washington, and that was 231 miles per hour. Arthur stuck his head out the window and lost his hat. It's the only hat he's ever lost, actually. We all recognize this motif number 1. And Arthur's still shooting. This is a current picture. You can still see that he hasn't lost his touch for color and composition. This has been one of Arthur's most rewarding pictures because it has been used many, many times again. Arthur had the opportunity for self-portrait, and notice the red shirt. He found himself several times in his own pictures, as we see him again. Arthur's celebrating, actually. Arthur was at the World's Fair in Japan. He's celebrating the fact that he left on the last plane out of Cambodia before the Vietnam War. This is self-explanatory. And here, I'll try to add a little music to these last shots for those of you who didn't make the parade. Let's see if I can make this work. Okay, thank you.
We pledged our allegiance to it when we were young.
The flag was still there.
We studied its importance when we were in our teens.
He saw the flag.
We sing its praises at every sporting event. We display it when we celebrate.
Present. Huh.
Lower it when we mourn.
Our flag is presented on behalf of a grateful nation.
And honor our heroes with it when they've fallen. The flag of the United States of America. It stands for what we are and what we believe in. How we treat it.
Whit, thank you very much. I thought that was excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is not a stranger to any of us here. It's my pleasure to introduce a very good friend of mine and the former state representative, Whip Saltmarsh.
Thank you very much, John. Clarence Beauregard mentioned a fake. Well, you know, we all sit here as interested citizens and to honor Arthur tonight. And, you know, I spent a number of years in the legislature. And Whit showed a slide which showed Beacon Hill. And he showed what you thought was black paint being put on the golden dome of the State House. You know, during the war. You know what it really was? It was the Democrats scraping the gold leaf off the dome. He has to take notes. He's slowing down a little bit. I known Arthur a long time, maybe a little bit longer than he and I want to think about, but 4 years ago, a little bit longer than that, I guess, Arthur came to me and he said, you know, I've got an idea. I said, what's that? He said, Whip, he said, been thinking a long time that I would like to really do something for the town of Winchester. He said, I've lived here most all my life. I've had a great career. But I'd like to make a contribution to the community, something which would be lasting. So he and I went down before the Board of Selectmen, and Arthur, at that time, made the presentation to the board. And at that time, he said, I would like to give to the town a gallery, a museum, which would be part of our community and which would store all the works of my entire career, which number in the hundreds of thousands. And we got a great reception. And as a result of that meeting, tonight we're all here to honor a man who was world-renowned in photography and one who has a great love for New England, and particularly the town of Winchester. One of the first things we had to do was to try to find a site to erect this museum. We looked at the Wadley School lot. We looked at a piece of land near the post office, a piece of property over on Cambridge Street, and other areas. Finally, we located the site through the help of the Board of Selectmen and other people in town, the site which is now going to house the museum, the piece of property which is on the Shore Road, overlooking the mill pond. Oh, tonight, when I was asked to say a few words about Arthur and what the history of the process was in town, I went to Polly several weeks ago and I said, You know, I know that there are many people that are going to be there that haven't seen all of his works. And believe me, there are some which I'm going to share with you in a minute, which I consider probably the finest photographs that Arthur has ever taken. These are priceless. They are going to be in the entryway of this museum. And after spending hours and practically days with Paulie going through these, I think, it seems like hundreds of thousands of photographs, I have several which I'd like to show you tonight and just tell you a little bit about each one. If I could have the help of our Toastmaster with his rented tux. Incidentally, we'll try to hurry this up. You know, he has rents one every year. He has to be done 9:45.
I gotta get the suit back.
This first photograph is a picture of Arthur out here in the Aberdona trying to find a site. This is Clarence Beauregard right here. Harry Sheffalo. This is Arthur. And that's John Sullivan behind him. This is a great photograph. This is one Arthur's prized photographs. This is a truck which tipped over up on Route 93. Some of you didn't think he took these type of photographs, but this, again, is going to be in the entry of the museum. You can just see the detail, the name of the company, the wreck. It's something which Arthur really prizes.
Did you insure that?
The next one, as you'll see, is to do with animals. As you've seen the photograph which showed of the horses. This is one which Arthur took many years ago of 3 dogs fighting over a ball. It's like the Democrats trying to cut up the budget in Beacon Hill. Again, this will be in the lobby. Arthur has a great feeling for the environment. This is one of his finest. This is a sewage overflow. This is Horn Pond after a heavy rain and the sewage is coming up. And I know his love for the countryside, the seascape, and that's going to be one of his prize showings. This next one is a result of the sewage overflow. Again, this is Horn Pond. A lot of dead fish. But this, again, shows his feeling for the environment, what he's trying to do to make it a better place to live.
This is really good.
Wait till we get to some more. You'll see how good they are.
This looks like behind your building.
You have to hold it this way. There it is. This is another great one he took. This is one of his real favorites. Paulie thought this may be the first one they'll put up. Again, this is a picture of our environment and how it should be cleaned up. Another one to do with our environment. Prize photograph. He spent hours setting up for this. You can just see the detail of the garbage cans and the rubbish and the stones and everything.
Sorry, I dozed off.
This one you'll all recognize. It's one of our favorites. You recognize that in Saturday mornings? That's the transfer station looking up the conveyor belt. Incidentally, John Sullivan was the one that built that. Now you saw, where you put that up, you saw that Whitney mentioned that many of his photographs appeared in Life magazine and Collier's and well-known magazines throughout the country. This appeared in a magazine which some of you have read, I know, in the past. This is a Playboy magazine, 1969. You can just see the detail of the young lady. This was from the Winton Club show, incidentally, at the town hall. Another one of the Winton Club, which Arthur took. No, you don't get that one. You won't either. This was one of Arthur trying to raise some money for the museum, you know he'll try to do anything. Incidentally, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but you're all here really tonight to give a substantial contribution to the museum if you haven't already. He's almost there on his endowment, and John's going to write a check out. This is a photograph which Arthur took. It's a picture of our Toastmaster tonight, and
That was Robert Ridgely.
a picture of May Sarika, who was the former chairman of the Democratic Town Committee, and John Sullivan, John giving her a citation from Governor Dukakis. I think you remember him. On the bottom it says, "Thanks for leaving the Democratic Party, May." As you know, she's left the Democratic Party. "Hope you're next, John. Sincerely, Bill Weld." And the last one is a great photograph of the man we're honoring tonight. And just in closing, I'd like to say that I've been involved in a lot of different things in town, and I think one of the, and probably the most important ingredient we have in our community to make it a community is the contribution of everybody in this town to make Winchester what it is. It's the volunteerism of people on the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, town meeting members, various committees, the Chamber of Commerce, the Town Day, whatever the case may be. And Arthur, through his generosity, is going to continue that tradition in this town by giving us that museum. And I think that, without exception, that this town is the type of community where people, because of the feeling, the contribution they make, that people like Arthur Griffin continue to make this town we're so proud of. Just the building we're in here tonight was given to the town by many contributors, but particularly the Jenks family, and it was through their generosity that we're able to have a beautiful facility for the senior citizens. And now Arthur, through his generosity, is continuing that tradition. And I would just like to thank Arthur as someone who has known him a long, long time and who had the pleasure of taking him down to the Board of Selectmen the very first night. That Arthur, we owe you the greatest debt for what you have done for this town, and our appreciation for you. You have just done something which is unheard of, particularly in this society. As Bill O'Leary pointed out, it's a rarity that people in public office today have anything which is maybe positive to talk about. But yet Arthur, through his kindness and generosity and tenaciousness to go through all the permitting process and so forth, has been so kind to do this for the community. And the young people who are going to be able to use this facility and those who want to go visit it and see the things that are going to be there are going to be the benefactors. So Arthur, again, is one who has been with you from the beginning in this. I want to thank you ever so much for what you've done for the town of Winchester, particularly the surrounding communities, but also your profession, the profession of photography. Thank you very much.
Whip, on behalf of the Arthur and his family and all of us here, we thank you for finishing. Whew, funny guy. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is a neighbor of Arthur's and also a good friend and our town manager, Mr. Chad Mora. Mr. Mora.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight. I do have a few remarks to make. And in preparation for those remarks, I went over and I talked to Polly to try to find some information on Arthur and what Arthur's life was all about and what really Arthur thought about his life, to be able to translate what he thinks into some words for this evening. And when I talked to Polly, she said, I really don't know what to tell you but there's this old trunk that we have down cellar, and why don't you just take that and maybe you can get some ideas from that. So what I did is I went down in Arthur's cellar this afternoon and I got this trunk. And in this trunk, Polly assured me that there was the story of Arthur Griffin in the trunk. Now, I don't know what's in the trunk, because I just found the key tonight. And I'm going to open the trunk right now, and we'll find out what happens to be inside. But one of the things that you know, if you read any of Arthur's books, you know that they are not just beautiful picture books, but there is very good messages that are written on every page. He has famous authors that have written articles, as well as there are little statements about what went on when Arthur was taking the various pictures. And those are all in the book, and there are some very good words in there. So in opening the trunk,
Just be careful now. It may be opening the trunk.
the first thing that we find in the trunk is the baby book that Arthur's mother kept when Arthur was a young boy. And we find that in the book, we find that Arthur spoke at a very early age. In fact, the words that he spoke, the first words out of his mouth, set the direction and the tone for his life from that day forward. And we find that he spoke on the first day of his life. And there, on that day, his mission for life was cast. And the first word was not a word, it was a phrase. And the phrase was, the Arthur Griffin Museum for Photographic Art. And this was in the trunk. We also know that in order to be a success in anything in life, you have to dress the part.
Here.
So now we're ready to go to work. Now, when we say we're ready to go to work, you have to have a mission in life, and in order to accomplish that mission, you have to be able to make money and you have to be able to raise money. And there's no greater person that we know today that knows how to raise money than Arthur Griffin. And I will show you his methods. If you've gone to the 8:30 Mass at St. Mary's and Arthur has passed the plate, you think that this is going to some charitable cause in the name of God or whatever. It's not. In fact, Father Cohen discovered what Arthur was doing with the proceeds from this basket, and Arthur no longer collects at St. Mary's. However, if you've gone to St. Charles in Woburn, he's been over there for a month and they haven't caught on to it yet. One of the things that you need to be a successful photographer is, of course, a camera. Now, everyone wonders why Arthur has a camera. Now you say, well, that's to take pictures. Yes, it might be. So in reading through one of his books, I found out why Arthur carries a camera. And these are in Arthur's own words. A camera opens more doors than any other gadget. It's your passport to long-lasting friendships. With a camera in your hand, you can approach pretty girls without the guilty feeling that they might take you for a dirty old man. Is that right?
Right.
And judging from some of the pictures, I think he's had a pretty good time throughout all his life. So, the other items that we find in the box is a jug of water. The jug of water that's in this box can symbolize a river or a stream or a trickling brook. We also find in the box trees and flowers. We find that red shirt that everybody's been talking about that he uses as a prop in his pictures. And we find sailboats. We find buildings, bridges, winding roads, sunsets. We find a can of cold beer. And Arthur always believes that you have to reward people that help you out in life. Again, reading from Arthur's book. I'm going to find the page. You have no idea how tired my finger gets after a day of snapping pictures with it. And I always enjoy rewarding it by wrapping a cold beer, wrapping it around a cold beer. The last thing that I find in the box is a kernel of corn. A kernel of corn represents the imagination of an individual who has put all of the components and many more together over his entire life to draw a picture of what the world is and makes that image of the world permanent for us to enjoy into the future. Arthur, I thank you as a neighbor and a friend, and I wish you well in the future. Thank you. Thank you. Can I keep the jacket?
No, you can't
Can I keep the jacket?
No, you can't keep the hat.
Clean this up now.
No, it's all right. It's all right. We don't need it. He asked Arthur if he could have the coat, and he said, no way.
No way.
Let's hear it for Chad Moore, a real good sport and great guy. Well, after whip. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a member of Arthur's family. And while all of us are proud to know you, Arthur, and proud of your accomplishments, I'm sure that nobody is more prouder than the next speaker, Lee, your daughter.
Good evening. Traveling this evening with you all down memory lane has been a most proud, nostalgic moment for me. To have Arthur Griffin for a father is a lifetime experience that is hard to describe, and I'm sure that you can understand that. Not only has he made life exciting and interesting for me, but he has guided me both morally and professionally throughout my life. To see his dream about to become a reality is the most rewarding of all. The word father that is so aptly describes him to me is as follows. F is for a father, who is a free spirit and a fashion plate. A is for Arthur and his art. T is for his technical ability, and a superb teacher. H is for his healthy, hearty, and hale approach to life. E is for his enthusiasm and his eccentricities. R is for his resiliency and his reliability. I want to thank you all for joining us and for your loving support, and most of all, for the honor you have bestowed upon him this evening. Congratulations, Ed.
Thank you, Lee. I should have mentioned that Lee is an artist in her own right. She hails from Beverly Hills, California, where she has her own company and is a very well-known and very successful graphic arts designer. Next, I'm sure one of the people that is the most proud, may I introduce at this time, probably the one who should be honored tonight after the last few months of activities, Arthur's wife, Polly.
A character, a legend in his time. Arthur's really quite unique. A free spirit, he's one of a kind. Known for his camera technique. Think positive is his motto. The way he lives each day, everything becomes possible in such an easy way. No matter how precarious, to capture that certain shot, he'll cling to the side of a mountain. Picture perfect, more often than not. No trespassing, police take notice. Posted signs don't mean a thing. They lure him on to untold beauty. These pics make him the king. The challenge for the unusual when traveling here or abroad might find him on foreign terrain where Americans have never trod. He's enriched us with his pictures, adored by me and every fan. We come to honor our man of the year, this colorful, lovable man. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, to make the final presentation this evening, I'd like to introduce the president of the Winchester Chamber of Commerce, Alan Iden. Alan?
My first note here this evening says that don't pick on John Sullivan because he bites back. So I won't. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to welcome you all to the 12th Annual Outstanding Citizen of the Year Award Dinner. I want to thank all the speakers and the people who made this evening possible, and recognize a couple of people in our audience that haven't spoken yet. There are a few. A couple of members of our Board of Selectmen, Bob Deering and Steve Powers. And I'd like to recognize some of the people that help make my work at the Chamber a lot easier, and that's people on our Board of Directors, and we have quite a few of them here tonight. Just quickly recognize them. Tony Albiani, John Connery, Karen Buckley, our newest member, Kathy Jackson, Dick Malcolm. Is Patty Mullen here? I don't think she's here, no. Martha O'Neill. Where is Martha? Martha was here. Dave Pywell. Bob Salter. And Peter Segerstrom. Thank you all very much. And of course, the people who worked so hard to make this evening possible, our Executive Director, Kathy Alexander. And Betty Donahue. Betty, thank you. Well, last Saturday, I had the honor and the privilege of riding in the Enka Parade, or escorting Arthur and Polly and Lee. And I told Arthur that I'd been an admirer of his work since childhood, 4 or 5 years ago. And I was very proud that the Chamber, I hope, has played a significant role in moving this museum project forward. Now, we had a problem. One of our problems was trying to find a gift for Arthur for this evening to recognize his efforts. And our usual gift to Citizens of the Year is a Griffin photograph. And we kind of figured he probably had all of those. So we decided to go all out, and we're giving him an advanced copy of tomorrow's Winchester Star with a color picture of Arthur and Polly on the cover. Seriously, though, in lieu of a picture, Arthur, the Chamber is pleased to present a check for the endowment fund.
Oh, thank you very, very much.
And on behalf of us all, we want to thank you for your generosity and for your love of Winchester. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year, Arthur Griffin.
Well, hi, folks. As you all know, I have a stutter, but I'm not at all sensitive about it. But I don't think I should keep you up all night to hear my speech. And so I'm going to have John Elliman give my speech. Okay?
I hope I can do this justice now.
Say no.
He handed this to me a few minutes ago, and it's a little tricky.
No, but please stutter at the right time.
Thank you much, Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, this was presented to me a few minutes ago, and so just bear with me here. John, please take over. To be honest, I feel that the impediment in my speech has actually helped me in my career. Folks would remember me by it, and I did get first-class treatment with it on occasions. I did have many funny experiences. Sometimes the stutter helps. It makes people eager to help the poor guy. I once made a U-turn in the middle of the street, and a cop whistled me down. He moved to the window growling. I managed to get in the first word. But officer, I started. His look turned to one of disgust, and he said, "Go on, you, get the hell out of here." One day, taking pictures in the Boston Common near Park Street Church, a very pretty young girl came up to me and asked, "Could you please tell me how to get to the public garden?" I started to tell her, and the next thing I knew, she hauled off and hit me.
It's true, really.
You could have run against Whip. A cop came by and asked me why I was bothering her. Before she could reply, I yelled, "This gal seems to think that she's the only damn person in town who stutters." Ladies and gentlemen, some of my friends call me King Arthur. As you all know, the power behind the throne is usually a woman. My whole life was wrapped around 4 wonderful women. And I wouldn't be sitting here tonight in the Jenks Place, Jenks Palace, he calls it, Clarence will like that, if I didn't have it throughout my life, their advice, their counsel, and their prayers. To start life, I was blessed with a most wonderful mother. She was German, born 2 years after her parents came to Lawrence. She was only 5 foot tall and never weighed over 100 pounds. But she was a dynamo and complete boss in our small home, which had 8 kids. She was a terrific cook, made homemade bread every other day with pies and cookies. Our family bought flour by the barrel. For years, my brothers and I would stand around the barrel as Pa used an axe to open the top of the barrel to see if the barrel had brought another baby. That's where we all thought babies came from. My mother encouraged me to dream of being an artist. Pa thought that I should have been a plumber. During Prohibition, I ran a number of artist costume parties each year for a while. At my New Year's Eve soiree in 1932 at the Longwood Cricket Club, I met Claire through one of my brothers who had brought her down from Lawrence. We were married 1 year later. I think that the dedication of my first book, New England, sums up pretty well the 43 wonderful, exciting, and interesting years we spent together. It read, "To Claire, the best camera caddy in the whole world. The one who has helped carry my camera equipment in many parts of the world, taken notes, names, and locations, packed bags for one-night stands, then went into weeks and comforted me while waiting for that special light or that special sun. In between all this, she managed to take wonderful black and white snapshots." Our friends think that the third woman of my life, my daughter Lee, is a combination of her parents, but looks very much like her mother. She joined us on many trips during school vacations. When she graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design in 1958, we decided to spend months in Europe on one grand tour, because when she came home, she would start a career and wouldn't be able to join us on long vacations. After over 4 months, we sailed home, and Lee found in the mail a few job offers. The nearest was in my hometown of Lawrence. She left early one morning for her first interview at the Barter Plastics Design Department. The afternoon went on, and then the evening, and we wondered what was keeping her. She got the job, but she had to stay around for the physical. While on the examination table, get careful here, let me read ahead. I still got to run. While on the examination table with just a sheet over her, geez, my mother's, oh, it's okay. A sheet over her, the doctor said, "Did anyone ever tell you you look just like your mother?" Lee thought that was a new approach until the doctor told her that Claire was a one-time patient of his. Lee, like her father, doesn't like to be tied down and is now a successful freelance artist designer in Beverly Hills. My fourth gal is Polly. Polly Howe married Bill Lee, who was a next-door neighbor of Claire in Lawrence. When they were little kids, after Bill's death, Polly was a widow for 8 years. We had visited the Lees, but I hadn't seen Polly for over 15 years. We kept in touch through Christmas cards, and I called Polly once for a dinner date. We discovered that we had a great deal in common. At this time, I was completing my third book, New England, The Four Seasons, and thought of dedicating it to Polly. I showed her the paragraph I planned to use, and she didn't care for it, and suggested one that I did use, and it reads like this: "To Polly, my wife, she came with a casserole and stayed for dinner." We both liked this, for I did get a few casseroles and baked goodies. Besides getting a sweet, talented wife, I now also have 4 beautiful grandchildren. At this time, I would like to offer my sincere thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for honoring me with their Citizen of the Year award, and also to my many new and old friends in Winchester who have made this terrific honor possible. I'd like to thank in particular Whip Saltmarsh, who brought me to one of many of the selectmen's meetings, first in the May of 1987. He was always very enthusiastic, as were they, of my offering to build a grist mill photograph museum here in Winchester. I then didn't have any idea that it would take 4 long years to give something away. Dick Wills of Royal Barry Wills Associates, who has designed our grist mill project without a fee. Thank Charlie Westgate, Charlie Westgate. Charlie will build our Center for Photographic Art at his cost, and he may even throw in his shirt. I'd like to thank Ron Navola, who has offered the sprinkler system and landscape lighting. I'd like to thank all of the many town officials who work so diligently getting the beautiful Shore Road site for us. I'd like to thank the Winchester Star. I'd like to thank the Purity Supreme, both for giving the Center of Photographic Art such wonderful exposure. And a very special thank to you, the hard-working committee who is handling the fundraising.
Everybody stand in the committee. Come on.
Arthur would like the fundraising committee to stand. And last but not least, let me offer my sincere thanks to the many generous individuals and organizations that have made donations of any size to the endowment fund. I would like to invite all you, my dedicated friends, to our great opening sometime in the fall. I'm looking forward to seeing you all there, the night with the doors open, the lights on, and the water wheel turning. I love you all. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope you had a good evening, and I know Arthur would like to say hello to anybody who would come up front after it's over. And we're going to show a video there for anybody who has time to watch it on the grist mill. Thank you very much for coming, ladies and gentlemen.
Kelly, we need to talk.
We just came from a parent-teacher conference.
Mrs. Jones thinks you're a very bright student, but you need to pay more attention to your homework.
But, Dad... Let's make a deal. You set aside enough time to do your homework, and we'll take the time to check it with you every night.
Okay, Mom.
And the next time we talk to Mrs. Jones, she'll be as proud of you as we are.
Today's students need all of us.